Hello, Legion. This is Hadrian. Thank you for being here. Let's play some more of The Long Dark in our Survival School series. So I've decided with this episode, as you might have seen in the title, I want to cover crafting and cartography. And by crafting specifically, I want to talk about field crafting. The second episode of Survival School 2017, I think, was called Fires and Field Crafting. So we're kind of staying on topic, but we're also introducing an entirely new section of the game that was introduced in the Faithful Cartographer patch not too long after Survival School 2017 was released. So we're going to go over a couple of those topics and address a few things that came up in the comments for episode 1 as well. Speaking of that, let me jump on this right away before I go anywhere else. We're still kind of where we left off in the last episode, and I want to very quickly jump back to the clothing menu because we had a great discussion about this in the comments. Brief discussion, but a great discussion. So I mentioned how the innermost layer here, except for accessories, really, because accessories don't really have a spot on your body. But, for like your legs, your torso, the head, the feet, the innermost layer is the one that is actually the innermost layer on the character's body. So you've got this paper doll here, and these items represent the items that you're wearing on the inside. A few very, very observant viewers noticed that when I put this weaker toque in the inner slot, the warmth bonus actually went down. Let me take this off and I'll show you what I mean. This shouldn't be happening if the system works exactly as I have described. And I have ascertained really, we talked about it in the comments, but I came in and tested this, that the head slot for now, in the current version of the game, if you're watching this in 2018, I've already tweeted the developers about this. They might actually tweak it in the future, but it might be intentional, you never know. But for now, that rule that I was just talking about at the end of the last episode that I was just talking about a moment ago is reversed for the head slots. So this is actually the outermost layer for the head slots. Everywhere else, as far as I can tell, these are the inner layers, these are the outer layers. Inner, outer, because they're farther away from the character. But in terms of the head, this is actually the outermost layer. So good for you for spotting that. I appreciate the commenters who not only asked about it, but also helped me figure out what was going on and offered some explanations to help each other understand what the heck was happening. So jumping into the content for this particular episode, another thing that I want to begin with, because we didn't get to it quite at the end of the last one, is, well, eating and drinking and the kinds of things that you can do and the kinds of things you have to look out for when you are eating and drinking food. Notice that we have 3 items that are relatively low condition, including one that's getting down to about 27. I talked a little bit, I mentioned afflictions in the previous episode, but I didn't talk about afflictions and what they are specifically. I didn't actually define them, but we talked about condition. We've got, right now we're looking at 100% condition, and we talked about our status indicators. Afflictions, which we currently have none of, come in 2 varieties. There's yellow afflictions, which typically are risks of greater afflictions, and those really are not afflictions at all. Those are just risks. And then there's actual red afflictions. So that's referring to things like food poisoning, wolf bites, infections. What's another affliction that you can have? Sprains, for instance. There are all kinds of things that can happen. You can also get dysentery, even if you drink water that is not potable in the Long Dark. It's incredibly easy to make water potable, in other words, drinkable, in the Long Dark, and boil it to where it's pure and safe to consume. But if you don't, you can actually get dysentery. That's another affliction. And there are a bunch of others as well, including everybody's favorite, cabin fever. But what I want to start with, while I'm talking about food, is of course food poisoning. Once you start to get down to about 27% condition, and I mean lower than that obviously, this is just the condition of this particular item. Once you start to get below 25, especially below 20, into the teens and definitely 10 or below.
Nothing to drink.
Really? Nothing to drink, dude? I'm about to drink this orange soda, so relax. Anyway, you need to start being concerned about what you're going to put in your body. Another thing to consider is maybe if the condition on an item is at 27, you might want to go ahead and eat that now, right? And that's what we're actually going to do. These banged up pork and beans are 600 calories. And also the nice thing here, notice if I were to sort this by weight, this would be one of the heaviest items. So by eating that, I actually got rid of a little bit of weight as well, which is nice. But you might have also noticed when we were consuming that actually drove our thirst down a little bit, and now our thirst meter is approaching the very bottom of its limits. So we need to drink this orange soda as well. Again, notice that it's having dual effects. Even though this is a drink, this also restores calories. Lots of food items will actually affect both your thirst and your hunger in different ways. If you eat a whole box of saltine crackers, you'll love all the calories that you'll get to intake, but you'll generally be a lot thirstier when you finish eating them. So that's something to be mindful of as well. Let me actually step outside if I can see where the heck I am roughly. I think the door's here-ish. No, that's a bed. Where am I? All right, I think the door is... There it is. I found it. Okay. Feeling my way around in the dark. We can't really stay where we are right now, because let me tell you one thing about sleeping in the long dark. We'll talk about the rest of the interface in just a second that I mentioned I want to go over with crafting and cartography and such, but you don't want to go to sleep when your thirst meter is only that full and you don't have anything to drink. So we are actually going to do something that's a little bit risky, and we're going to set out at night. Thankfully, right now, we actually have pretty good visibility. I am starting to see a few snowflakes fall through the air, so weather could change pretty soon. I'll be taking some time in a coming episode to actually talk about the weather and how to kind of interpret it, how different zones treat the weather, because the weather does vary from zone to zone. So we'll go into more detail about that at a future point. But for now, my focus is on making sure that I have something to drink before I rest. Now, you might recall in the previous episode, I talked about how I really don't have to worry about my exhaustion too much affecting my carrying capacity or anything like that until it's about halfway down. Obviously, I'm not carrying that much right now, so even if, I get exhausted, I'm not going to have to worry about slowing down because I'm tired. But I still will need to rest somewhat soon. Also, speaking of commenters and feedback I received on episode 1, another thing that was pointed out to me, which I never remember because I very rarely play on Voyager or Pilgrim, and I'm sorry, I don't mean at all to be condescending, I really don't play often on these modes, and I forgot this genuinely. On Voyager and Pilgrim, there are actually amnesty periods for the wildlife. And speaking of wildlife, hang on. Is that a railroad link, or is that a wolf? No, it's a railroad link. Okay. So there are amnesty periods that the game sets up for you that actually will... I'm making my way towards a place where there might be water, I promise. But there are amnesty periods that the game sets up for you that actually, when you're playing on lower difficulty levels, you will not be attacked by wildlife for the first number of days. I don't know the exact number, so check the comments. I think someone actually mentioned in the comments on episode 1 already, but we might be able to bring it up again in the comments on this episode. But we are definitely, I believe, still in that amnesty period right now. And if we're not, we might be about to get attacked by a wolf, because we're in an area where they tend to hang out. Let's see, there's usually some other stuff sitting on this hillside, but I cannot see to save my life right now. Is that it? No, that's the corpse I just searched. I think I heard footsteps. That makes me a little bit nervous. We'll talk, too, about general indicators that you can hear in the game about the presence of... that would tell you that an animal is nearby. I mean, it might be something as simple as footsteps, but there are other sounds that you can learn to listen for that indicate, for instance, the presence of bears in the long dark. Like if there are things you can learn to kind of tune your ears to, and you know that a bear is nearby, which is kind of cool, right? So I wish I could see a little bit more here. I don't have any means to light my way any better than what I've currently got. So I'm just going to make my way in the dark. We're not far from a very central Mystery Lake location. And that is where I'm going to try to go. Unfortunately, it's still going to be dark once I get in there. What I'm hoping for is a lantern. And this, by the way, what I'm doing right now is something you might very well be doing yourself in a fresh playthrough of The Long Dark, whether you are playing on Mystery Lake or not. You know, you might find that, well, again, calculated risk. It's the middle of the night. It's cold. And especially if you're playing on higher difficulty levels, right at the start, you're not going to have that much clothing. So you're not going to be doing as well as we are right now. Look at our, warmth indicator. We're actually not even that cold. It even feels like 12 degrees. It's not even that cold, considering the fact that there's a gust blowing and it's almost midnight. But you might decide, well, I can't really afford to rest the night where I am. I better get going. I better move while it's dark and see if I can find somewhere else to stay. Oh, that's a deer. I knew I saw a silhouette, but it was a deer. Okay. Really hoping for a lantern in here, but we will see. At the very least, this is a location where we're going to be able to find some additional gear to talk about. But I would like to go ahead, pass the time, and have a new day so we have some daylight. It just, for some reason, I kind of want to have it be light, even if we're indoors, before I talk about the next topic. It's just kind of an instinct that I have going right now. So switching to Let's Play mode for a second, and we're just going to, well, yeah, we can't see a damn thing. Sometimes night vision in places like this is pretty great. Right now it's not. I do not have that many matches, unfortunately. I have how many matches? 11. I want to set a better example than I did in the previous episode. Well, there is one thing I can do. Hang on. Where are you? There you are. On my way to the potbelly stove in the dark. And I might as well go ahead and talk about starting fires, because I need to start a fire so we can have a little bit of light in this place. I have 11 matches on me. We've got one tinder plug, and I'm going to talk in a bit about how to get tinder, because there's lots of ways to get tinder when you run out. It's something that is easy to run out of, but also easy to get more of, and it's also easy to remind yourself, using the game's interface, all the different ways you can get tinder. So never panic if you're out of tinder. Chances are you can find some, and there's lots of different ways, and we'll talk about it. But you also need fuel when you're starting a fire, so you need actual wood. You might also find that if you have a book on you, books light on fire very, very easily. They don't burn for very long, but they have a higher chance of success. So what you start the fire with as your initial fuel can actually be better. And then, of course, you can use accelerant. We only have one accelerant. I'm not going to waste that now, but that would give me a 100% fire starting chance, and it even actually speeds up the fire starting process to where you don't have to wait to see if you succeeded to start the fire. Also, let's go ahead and take this charcoal, because we're going to talk about that in a second. That has to do with the cartography edition that was made in Faithful Cartographer. So let's go ahead, and we're going to use just a tinder plug, and I guess, I don't know. When you try to start a fire, you'll consume one match, and you'll consume your starter, and you'll consume your tinder. So you just have to be aware of that. And that's why I mentioned when it comes to matches, especially on higher difficulty level, you want to conserve them. They're a limited resource. Matches are literally the number of fires that you can light unless you find a fire striker. So don't be silly with your matches and use them to light rooms and search. And I've actually done this in series and had people be really critical of me for it. But in lower difficulty levels, you will find a lot of matches. So you can be liberal if you want to, but a good rule of thumb, if you really want to be good at the long dark, don't waste your matches. Just remember that. All right, so that fire actually lit on the first try, which is amazing. And I'm going to go ahead and pile some of the reclaimed wood that I picked up onto the fire. So we now have an hour and 20 minutes fire. It's putting out 16.2 degrees of heat, which will go up and up and up the more fuel I add to it, whether I add sticks, reclaimed wood, fire log, what have you. For now, I'm just going to let that fire burn as is, but actually, no, I'm not. Let's put one more reclaimed wood on there. We're definitely going to go ahead and get... I'm making... You know what? Rather than do what I was about to do and do this the right way, I'm going to do this the wrong way to demonstrate the risks of what I was saying last episode about taking too long with certain things. So 0.6 gallons takes a little bit longer than 0.4 gallons, takes a little bit longer than 0.2 gallons, right? To melt that amount of snow into water. Watch our thirst meter go down. It's not going down too quickly because we're playing on Voyager. If you were playing on Stalker or Interloper, it'd be going down faster. But again, you want to be mindful of how long these things take, because sometimes you say to yourself, oh my god, I'm really thirsty. You might already be dying of thirst. Your thirst might already be bottomed out, and you say, well, here, let me boil a ton of water. Maybe boil just enough to get your thirst meter out of being dehydrated before you boil the rest of your massive amount of water. So as you saw there, what I was doing was I melted the snow and then I also boiled the water. You can do that in a 1-2 step process, basically, every single time you have a fire going. So why wouldn't you do it? If you've got a fire going, you got time left on the fire, you need water, figure out roughly, if I were to do 0.2 gallons and then it takes a little bit less time to boil than it does to melt. If I were to do 0.2 gallons to melt and then boil, do I have enough time? Do I have enough time for 0.4? Do I have enough time for 0.6? Kind of make those decisions about what you can get out of every fire and really make the most out of every minute that you're looking at here. Speaking of making the most out of fires, though, another thing that you can do is you can actually take torches out of fires. Notice that reduced the life of the fire by about 10 minutes. Oh, cool. There's another light shell. We're going to find a lot of gear in here. I'm going to take a second and look around while I've got this... got some lantern fuel, very nice. A whetstone. Let's take a second to scavenge, and then I'll get back to commentary. Stack of papers. We've still got crafting and cartography to talk about, I know. There's a line.
Wonder if this is any good.
New granola bar and a stale chocolate bar, and also looks like a hook on top of the workbench as well. So we might actually talk about proper crafting in the next episode since we are right by a workbench. So we got the newsprint roll. Table and chair can be broken down, but we're not going to do that right now. Again, never underestimate this game's capacity to hide things from you mercilessly. It can happen a lot. I'm going to go ahead and throw a few sticks on this fire to keep it going in case we need to come back after we're done looking around here. Get another torch for whatever reason. Summit soda. Some of you might be wondering if the items spawn in the same location every time. The Long Dark uses a system that the developers refer to as loot tables. And what that essentially means is that there are a bunch of potential locations. Hey, herbal tea, nice. There are a bunch of potential locations where items can spawn, and each particular location has a certain collection of items that will spawn at that location. Jerry can. Lots of lantern fuel. Now, we don't have a lantern, but that's still a nice find. Bandage, granola bar, tin of sardines. Ooh, pork and beans. Again, look at this. Look at this hidden under this. If I hadn't looked very carefully with a light source to see that there was something down there, I wouldn't have found it. There's more pork and beans there. Never underestimate this game's ability to hide stuff from you. But the way the loot tables work, anyway, is that there's a bunch of random locations, like those spots under the counters, where the game can possibly spawn items, and then there's certain types of items that'll spawn. And every single time a new game of the Long Dark starts, it makes a decision about every single spot in the loot tables, and about the likelihood of items spawning in those spots, and that depends on the difficulty you're playing on, whether you're playing on a custom difficulty, or anything like that. More antiseptic, bandage, and an emergency stim. Very nice. Those come in very handy if your condition is actually about to bottom out and you're about to die. They can really, literally save your life. And boost your condition, which is nice. All right, let me take another torch. So I now have 2 torches in my inventory, but that's okay. I've already gone through this file cabinet. Oh, that reminds me. Actually, while I'm looking at this, I know that I sound completely all over the place right now, but this is an important topic to cover early on. When you start playing the Long Dark in its current version, whether it's on PC or Xbox PS4, there's a setting turned on, or actually the setting is turned off, called accessible interactions. And what that means is that the default is, in order to open a file cabinet like this, you have to hold down the mouse button until that little dial spins all the way. If you want to switch it back to the older system that the Long Dark used to use, which is just click-based, I'm not holding anything right now, I'm just clicking and the dial moves on its own, you can go to Options, go to Controls, and turn on Accessible Interactions. That is designed to help people with carpal tunnel so they don't constantly have to click and hold. Okay, never mind, I actually dropped the first torch when I picked up the second one. That's fine. But I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because that's, dead guys here. That's one of the really, really useful things that you can do to make the gameplay experience a little bit more straightforward. Whether you have carpal tunnel or not, a lot of people were used to the click-based system. We got some more sardines there. That's nice. Fire starting book. Just a book that you can burn, like I was mentioning earlier. Some trail boots. Let's see what else we've got. Our torches going out. There's another bedroll, so We'll have plenty of crafting stuff to talk about once we wake up. We're running out of light here. And I'm not going to worry about getting another torch. I think I'm just going to rest for the rest of the night. And then finish scavenging in the morning. Let's go ahead and extinguish the torch. You can relight the torch, but guess what? It uses a match. So again, conserve your matches. So let's go ahead and get some sleep and spend the last few minutes of the episode actually talking about the content of the episode that I promised. And we actually, I know that sounds ridiculous that we've waited till the closing moments of the episode to talk about the chosen topic, but it actually worked out really well because we picked up a lot of stuff while we were here that we can use to kind of flesh out the topic a little bit. So let's pick up this bedroll because again, I'm approaching my encumbrance limit, but I'm okay. So, we got some more accelerant and some newsprint. I could break down these crates if I wanted to. It would take 15 minutes, only burn 56 calories, and I'd have some more reclaimed wood. I'm not going to worry about it for now. There's a stack of papers there. All part of our demonstration in just a second, as far as crafting goes. Anything else up here? I mean, I can break down this if I wanted to into cloth. Don't see anything else. Let's see if anything is hiding under there. Nope, doesn't seem so. I have not searched these drawers yet. Let's look in here.
What have we here?
Another wool toque. Okay, so let's actually go back into the menu as we close here. And I've just pulled the clothing menu back up, but we're going to go to the right here and go to crafting. Now, there's a hotkey for crafting. I actually don't know off the top of my head what the hotkey for crafting is. What is it for computer? Crafting? Oh. Maybe there's not one. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But anyway, this is the menu for field crafting. Notice there's 3 different categories. There's stuff you can craft on the fly. This is the field crafting menu right here. This is what you would use the workbench for. And there's different items. You can see what all the recipes are right off the bat. You need a workbench, like it's telling you, and you need these materials. I mean, you need a certain amount of time to make each item. But there's all kinds of crazy stuff that you can make, including, of course, the bow and arrow. Once you run out of, say, bullets, if you find a rifle, you can make your own projectiles. And then, of course, speaking of that, there are forge-based items as well. So if you are playing on a difficulty level, which you can, where there are no knives or no hatchets, that's playing on a difficulty level set with low resource availability. It's the very first setting in custom difficulty. You have to improvise your knives. You have to make improvised knives. You have to make improvised hatchets rather than finding them in the world. But there's a lot of stuff in the very first menu here that's very useful. These we'll talk about in a future episode because, again, they're plant-based items, and we notice that we have the option because of this check mark to go ahead and make some prepared rose hips from the rose hips that we've picked. So, again, I'll talk about what these do later on. But notice that I can craft a torch if I wanted to have a better torch than just the one that I pull out of a fire. The torch that you get out of a fire doesn't have a lot of burn time on it. A torch that you actually craft using 1 piece of cloth and 3 sticks is actually, and it also, as you can see, takes a little bit of lamp oil, actually will last you a good while and will burn down more slowly than a torch that you pull out of a fire. So you can craft a torch that is much better than the ones we were using. Ultimately, they're all the same item, but when you make one, it's like the maximum condition torch that you can start with, and you get to burn it all the way down from 100%, as opposed to the kind that you pull out of a fire, which always have only a few percent left on them to begin with. So just note that. Note also fishing tackle. So we can make this right now if I wanted to go ahead and go outside and fish, which we may well do in the next couple of episodes, because we've got that available to us now. And here's one really important thing as far as field crafting that I wanted to jump on right away. Bandages. All it takes is 1 cloth to make 2 bandages. So one of the first things that might happen to you in the long dark if you're exploring recklessly, if you run into a wolf, you might think to yourself, what if I'm out of bandages? What if I haven't found a bandage yet and I've gotten attacked by a wolf? What do? Well, actually, cloth is a pretty common resource in the game. I mean, look just in here. There's this cloth here you can break down, this cloth here, and if you select it, see, this is 3 cloth right here. That's 6 bandages just from this one. And there's more down there. So plenty of cloth to be had. It's a very, very common resource. You can also break down, of course, existing items that you find. Oh yeah, we actually should probably drink. Let's go ahead and drink some of our lower conditioned sodas. Again, we don't want to risk food poisoning. So I'm going to, in general, I want to eat my lower conditioned items first. Like I'm going to risk this moldy granola bar right now. Cross fingers. Okay. No food poisoning demonstration for us today. I'm going to go ahead and eat the beef jerky as well. Notice it is very salty. So that drove our thirst down a good bit, but that's okay. I'm going to drink the Summit Soda here as well because Summit Sodas are half a pound each. They're always good to get rid of when you want to save a little bit of weight. And I will top off our thirst just so that we can finish talking before I wrap up this episode. And I know I talked about cartography. I might spend a little bit more time in the next episode talking about it because I want to make sure that we give this section its due. Now, I mentioned there's all kinds of ways to get tinder. Look at this. You can use a stick. So once you find a stick in the world, you can just break down a stick. Let me show you. Harvest. Boom. I instantly have 2 more tinder plugs. And you know how common sticks are out in the world. They are a little bit less common on higher difficulty levels, but they're still pretty easy to find. So tinder, very easy to come by if you can find a stick. And that's not even the only option. If you have newsprint, which we have. If you have newsprint rolls, which we have. If you have stack papers, which we have 9 of them, you can make tinder plugs. Usually, see, newsprint rolls will make 4 tinder plugs, a single newsprint roll. So I've got enough for so much tinder, it's not even funny right now. So field crafting, don't underestimate the value of this. You can do all of these things on the fly. You can make an old man's beard wound dressing. Again, we'll talk about the plant-based crafting in a future episode, but you can make any of this on the go without any kind of tools. And by having this ready to go, by having these items ready to go, like for instance, old man's beard wound dressing, or having tinder, having bandages, having cloth on you that you can convert into those items, you actually improve your chances of survival a good bit. So let's also, while I'm thinking about it, speaking of things that we might not need, we have picked up some additional items. I got another shell, which I'm going to go ahead and put on, but 2 shells is not really that great as far as warmth protection. Ideally, you want a shell for the wind protection and then a jacket of some kind to put under the shell. And these are both not great. Well, this one's okay condition, but the one we just put on the outer layer is not great condition. So tell you what, let's actually swap these. See? The nice looking one is now on the outer layer, and we get the better wind protection on the outer layer. Actually, that's interesting. It's only showing a wind protection jump of 5.1 right now. So we might need to have more of a discussion about what's going on with this in the comments, because I'll be honest, I'm a little bit confused. I'm pretty familiar with the system, and the basics that I've explained to you are the basics. That's how it works, but there's an amount of precision that some of the commenters, as I mentioned, have pointed out, that's kind of missing right now. There's something that's not quite being explained by the way these numbers are adding up. So we can talk about it in the comments and maybe come to a conclusion over the next couple of episodes. And if we actually do have an answer, then I'll definitely talk about it in an episode so it can be clarified. We've already cleared that corpse. Let me step outside and show you one thing before I close. There was more cloth hanging by the door there, if you missed it. So it's a very nice day. We're very well fed. We're very well rested. We're not even that particularly cold. And actually, is there anything else I can put on? I think I found a better conditioned toque. Yeah, I did. Let's go ahead and switch that. We now have some extra clothing items that I can break down. That's what I was thinking about a moment ago. So I'm going to actually get rid of this toque. Some people would scream at me for harvesting a toque, but it gives us a piece of cloth. See, you can even get cloth from the extra clothing items you no longer need. Then you can use that cloth not only for bandages, but to repair the clothing that you have. So, a major addition, and I'll talk about this more in another episode, but a major addition that they made in one of the patches that came out after Survival School 2017 was the map. And right now the map is completely blank because I haven't actually colored in any of the map. I haven't actually used any charcoal, but we got some charcoal from the fire. Anytime you have a fire pit, anytime you have a campfire that is burned out that you find or that you actually start and then burn all the way down and then it cools off and you can just access it, you can take the charcoal from that X fire, I guess, if you want to call it that. Now, if I pull up the radio menu by holding down spacebar, that's a deer. If I pull up the radio menu, go to navigation, you can open charcoal. You can select charcoal as an option. And you survey the local area. And immediately we now have, well, it's no longer black. and an actual location and locations of limbs are noted on the map. So let me actually spend the end of this episode talking a little bit about what I just did in cartography, because now I can pull up the map and I can spend some time walking around the episode or walking around the zone if I wanted to, and really getting my bearings on the land. Totally not required. Most of us that have been playing the Long Dark since the beginning of early access, some of us might have adapted to using the mapping system, I don't know. Most of us probably know the maps like the back of our hands, but you can learn your way around this world. And I would argue that there is some fun to be had in learning your way around this world without using the cartography feature whatsoever. So what I would say that this is here for is when you really want something that is there that you can glance at to help you get your bearings, if you are not as good with directions, if you are not as good at pathfinding, and you really need something that's going to help you find your way from point A to point B, you have this wonderful option now of looking at a map in-game, which is really, really cool. So that's just something that I want to make sure you're aware of. That's obviously the far right option when you pull up the menu here. We've already gone through these first 4 here, and then that one. And the final one, of course, I'll talk about before I close is the journal. And let's step inside to go over this. Notice how much of my weight is, or not my weight, but my stamina is being taken away from me right now by the clothing that I'm wearing. It's ridiculous. But pull the journal up by hitting J. Gives you all kinds of information. You can look up your current skill levels and how close you are to leveling up your skills. So there's a carcass harvesting, a cooking, a fire starting, ice fishing, rifle, firearm, archery, and mending skill, all of which we will talk about in a future episode. But you can see what the basic bonuses you get from having higher than level 1 skill are right here. But then there's also the notes that you've collected throughout your journey. There's cairns, which are actual kind of tributes left by the backers of the game. And then there's notes that you can leave for yourself in your journal at any time. And then, of course, stats. Tons of information in here. As far as, have I really not played any Interloper? I guess I haven't. I haven't played any Interloper since launch, so my Interloper stats are empty. Lots of time spent in Stalker mode, though. So, yeah. So you can look at your stats in your journal menu anytime you want to pull that up and see what your progress is on your current run, or your overall progress making your way through the game. So in the next episode, I think I'll spend maybe a little bit more time talking about cartography. Well, maybe you guys can let me know in the comments if you feel like I covered it sufficiently there. It's not something that you have to do, but if there's any particular questions about it that resonate with me that make me want to cover it more, maybe I'll consider that for next time. We'll talk about some of those plants I've been alluding to for a couple of episodes, as far as making Old Man's Beard wound dressings and some of the other things you can harvest, because we are very near and dear. We're very near to one of my favorite harvestable items in the game right now. So I'm going to show you the usefulness next episode of the cattail. Oh, get ready. It's going to be a good one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along. New episodes are coming out every day at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Comments are always welcome. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.